Hello and welcome to the Humanity Inspires podcast. I'm your host, Mark Philpott. Hi everyone and welcome back to the show. It's great to have you all here. We're kicking on with the Humanity Inspires podcast. This is a show where I talk to people all across the world about anything. Yes, we talk about whatever's on our mind. It may be something topical in the news, it may be something important in the person's life or even in my life at the moment. We get to share deep, personal and up-close stuff. Yes, deep conversations, that's what it's about. I think we're missing this in the world today. The better we communicate with each other, the better respect we will have for one another. So that's what this show is all about. So if you haven't heard my other podcast shows, head on over to the Global Travel Channel and the Global Business Podcast. I'll put the links in the show notes today. You can check those two out. Love to have you listen in if you like travel or business. Then there's something there for everyone. Okay, let's get on with this particular show. Don't forget, you can go to Humaneity, humanity.com. And you can check out all the previous episodes. If you like the content, please share it with your friends, family members, or work colleagues. We'd love to get more people around the world listening to our podcast show. Okay, let's dive into this one and go and meet our guest for today. Ivana Katz, welcome. Welcome to the Humanity Inspire show. How are you today?
I am really excited to be speaking to you again. I had so much fun chatting with you last week, so I've been looking forward to this all weekend.
Oh, that's cool. And yeah, thanks very much for coming on my business show. It was great to talk to you, and I'm likewise excited to have a chat to you today because we don't even have to talk about business if we don't want to. We can talk about lots of other things.
Yeah, that's great. So let's talk about whatever inspires you.
Well, I was going to say, what did you do for the weekend? You said you were thinking about doing the show on the weekend. What else did you get up to?
Well, you know what, I've been working on the weekends, just mainly working on my website and doing things that I don't get to do during the week. But this weekend I decided to take off and I just caught up with friends, and we had Christmas in July barbecue with some friends yesterday, which was awesome. So just reconnecting with people after, the lockdown. I seem to be going out to 6-hour lunches and things like that.
Oh,
it's really hard.
That's nice, isn't it? Now, you're on the northern beaches in Sydney, aren't you?
I am indeed.
So was the weather nice enough for you to get outside in the weekend?
It was for a little while, but yeah, yesterday it started pouring and we had a bit of a thunder, but the rest of the time wasn't too bad.
Cool. I was thinking of a couple of things that I wanted to talk to you about today, and one of them was I'm always fascinated by people who migrate from one country to another and that whole process of what they go through and how they become assimilated to their new home. So you moved quite a long time ago from the Czech Republic to Australia to live. That was must have been quite a substantial move in your life.
Oh my gosh, yeah, because when my parents decided that they wanted to escape, the Czech Republic was a communist country. And so they decided that they wanted to give my brother and I a better future. And so they started planning this escape. And we escaped in I think it was October 20th, 1979. We escaped to Germany. And we lived there for about 8 months, and whilst our paperwork was being processed, and then we ended up coming to Australia on the 20th of June, and we've just been here 40 years. We celebrated. I can't believe it, which is a little bit hard to understand considering I'm only 30.
I won't tell anyone the truth.
No.
So tell me, when you use some pretty amazing words, then we escape to Germany. How does one escape their country when it's in the situation that it was?
You know what, my dad would probably answer this a lot better because I was only 13 at the time. So a lot of it probably escaped me because I wasn't aware of the preparation that my parents had to do before we left. But I do remember a few things, and one of them was, at the time, you needed to get approval from many different places in order to be able to go to a Western country. And so you had to get approval, like police clearance, and I think my dad had to get army clearance and from their employer and all sorts of things. And so my parents were really clever, and what they did was they started getting their paperwork processed at the same time. But what they said was that my dad would go to, and I can't remember, I think he was going to go and visit somebody in Sweden, and then when he returned, my mum, my brother and I would go and visit an auntie in Germany. And so and they would allow you to go out of the country provided you left the rest of your family members behind. And so
Right.
as the different I guess government departments saw that, you know, there would always somebody be staying behind, they allowed my parents and they gave them the approvals until it came to the last one. And the person noticed that my dad's date of when he was going to be departing and arriving was written in pencil. And he said, you can't have it written in pencil. And the reason Dad wrote it in pencil was so that he could change it once everything had gone through. And so he changed it. And so the guy said, well, you have to put it in pen. And he wrote it in pen. And he didn't, and he was praying that the guy doesn't notice that it's exactly the same date as my mum.
Right.
And so they changed it. They got the approval, and then we had about a week to get out of the country because one of Dad's colleagues from work had just escaped, and he called the office to say, look, I'm sick. I won't be able to come to work for another week, just to give us the time to pack our bags and leave.
Wow, this is like a real thriller story.
Yeah, well, you know what, I mean, our journey. So basically one day my dad said, I've got a surprise for you. And so my brother and I were really excited. And he said, we're going to Sweden tomorrow, and we're going for a holiday for a week. And so he said, but don't tell anybody.
Right.
And we were young and like, you know, it was no big deal. And the next day we just packed up our bags and we left. And we drove over the border to Germany. And we crossed the border, and Mum and Dad said, we've got one more surprise for you. And we're like, okay. And they're like, this is not a holiday. We're actually leaving and we're not going back.
Wow.
And
How did you feel?
I don't remember the moment
don't
when
remember,
they told
right.
us. But what I do remember was they pulled up at a shop, and my dad or Mum bought me, I thought it was a doll that I had always wanted, but Mum told me it was something else that I'd been wanting for a long time and that I couldn't buy in Prague. And just knowing that all the shops and the amazing things they had, I was sold. I didn't really, you know, I was ready to escape. My brother took a little bit longer to convince. He was about 4 years younger than me. But it was, so we basically just crossed the border, and we were looking for my dad's friend who had escaped the week before in Nuremberg in Germany. And we were driving around. We couldn't find them, but we did find, as we were driving, we saw this guy who had Czech number plates, and he saw that we looked lost, and he told us we could actually come and stay with him for the night until we were able to get hold of our friends. And so we stayed with him. He just reached out, never met us, never, you know, we didn't know who he was, but he let us stay in his house. And my dad, that night, he called his brother, and he said, you need to go to the basement. And that's where he left him a letter saying, you know, we're escaping and we're not coming back.
Wow.
Because my uncle was actually working for the army, and so they were listening to all his conversations at the time. And so, so that's how the rest of the family found out that we were escaping. But it was I guess the hard part was because we left everything behind. So everything in our apartment, we had, you know, maybe 3 or 4 suitcases, basically anything we could fit into our little car. And so everything else was left behind. And I know my parents didn't want to, they knew that once they found out that we're not coming back, the government was going to come in and take everything. So in the letter, my dad said, you know, go into our apartment, this is where the key is, and just help yourself to whatever you want. And so our relatives spent a few days sort of, well, in the middle of the night, moving stuff out of the apartment. And yeah, and then when it was discovered that we were not coming back, all hell broke loose. And
I bet.
Unfortunately, I think some of my relatives, they lost their jobs because of that, and they were not allowed to travel for a while. So yeah, unfortunately at the time, different time. So that was kind of the start to our journey, and we stayed in Germany for 8 months, as I said, and yeah, then
extraordinary. So there were repercussions on the rest of your family because of your departure from the country.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And as I said, they would have, I think there were other things, and they would listen to all conversations going, you know, back and forth. So we didn't really ring each other. Funnily enough, though, my grandmothers were allowed to come and visit us in Germany. But yeah, nobody else was allowed to travel for, I think, a number of years because of us.
Wow, extraordinary. So you crossed the border into Nuremberg, did you?
We did, and
right.
that's where we stayed for the whole duration whilst our paperwork was being processed. And the German government, I mean, they were amazing. The things that they gave us an apartment, and initially it was kind of like a housing commission apartment. So it was in the poorer sort of area of Nuremberg, and my brother and I started going to school. And then I think it was after a couple of months, they said, you know what, you have 4 members in your family, and they said it's against our law for you to be in a 2-bedroom apartment. So they actually upgraded us to this great 3-bedroom apartment.
Wow.
And they connected us with the church and charity just so that we could, maybe get some clothes and things like that. And Mum got a job, I think, cleaning houses for a while, because she was the only one who spoke a bit of German.
Yeah.
We didn't speak German. We didn't speak English. And so that's how we got through it. I think my parents also had a little bit of money, but the Czech crown back then wasn't worth much. So yeah, but we survived 8 months like that.
Wow. Was it sad to leave your friends at school and that behind without saying goodbye? Like, you wouldn't have had a chance to say goodbye to them, would you?
No, we didn't. I think the thing, when I was 13, the thing that was mostly on my mind was our guinea pig that we had left behind.
Probably ended up as someone's dinner or something, did it?
Yeah. Oh God, don't say that. No, and the funny thing is, I reconnected with friends from school, and we wrote, and everybody's like, oh my God, this is so exciting, like they're in the Western world. So we were seen as a bit of, I don't know whether the world is heroes, but this is like they're on this exciting adventure. And so a lot of people wrote to us, and so we kept in touch with them. Grandmas came and visited us, and funnily enough, 2 months after we escaped, my best friend and her parents escaped, and so we had her with us, for the time we were in Germany, and then they also followed us to Australia. So that was a bit of happy sort of reconnection after that time.
Yeah, beautiful. I want to pick up on something you said, because I had an experience with that as well, and I went to Germany for the first time in the early 1980s, and so it was roughly around when you were there, I guess, end of the 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
One of the things that really recognised with me was how compassionate the Germans were to refugees and immigrants and people from foreign nationalities coming into their country. And even if you look through to today, they're still the same. They have a lot of cultural diversity in Germany that they've brought in from all around, particularly Europe, obviously, but all over the place. They have a very strong sense of compassion, I found.
Which, yeah, and look, I agree. As I said, I was 13, so I wasn't so aware of it. I was only really sort of aware of my immediate surroundings, and everybody did treat us. When I look back at it, they did treat us with compassion. And when you think about it, all the things we were given, it was amazing. Like, you know, and at the time, I think when we escaped, there were not that many refugees. I think later on, there were a lot more people, so it was harder to manage. But we never had to go. They had like refugee camps. We never had to go to that. As I said, you know, our journey was so much easier than a lot of other people we had spoken about. But spoken to, I mean, one of the things I do remember though, and I think a lot of the refugees that we had come across was that we would have nightmares that the government would found us and they were going to take us back, and that happened every night and I think it was for quite a few years.
Who was in power in the Czech Republic back then?
Oh, I have no clue.
Okay.
I
But
don't
what?
remember.
But was there evidence where that was happening to other people? Had you heard of other people being captured and taken back into the Czech Republic?
Again, because I was 13, I wasn't aware of it, but it was something that I guess maybe my parents had talked about, and maybe I think it was more not so much that people were being captured, but I think it was just a dream, just a fear that you have that you would be captured. And I'm sure some people were intercepted as they were trying to leave the country. My parents, what I did find out was my parents were sentenced to 2 years jail if they had decided to return back into the country.
Yeah.
During that time. And I think my grandma had to go to court and and testify on our behalf or something. And they were given 2 years. And apparently the sentence was given because they had kidnapped my brother and I. So, you know, go figure.
So imagine though, if the date that your father had put on the paperwork was actually noticed to be the same as your mother's, then what would have happened then? You wouldn't have got out.
No, we wouldn't have. And as soon as it came out that his colleague had escaped, they wouldn't have. They would have stopped all travel. So for us, it was we had to get out when we got out. So it was meant to be. You know, it was just one of those things. And
pretty high risk and reward, though, isn't it? You know,
yeah.
like got your bags packed and you're not going anywhere.
But you know how it started? It was with my dad, because my dad was he was an engineer, and he went to London to study for about 5 weeks. He was doing a course, and he saw what life was like and the freedom that people had. And he said, you know, I want it better for my kids. And he came back and he said to Mum, you know, we should do this. And she's like, hell no. And it took a little while to convince her, but then finally they just decided, you know, let's do this, let's go on an adventure, and here we are.
So what do you think life would have been like if you hadn't got out?
I can't even imagine, and I don't want to imagine. I mean, I have traveled and I've gone back to Prague a couple of times since I left, and whilst I still refer to Prague as back home, I am so aware of how incredibly lucky we are to be living here. You know, everything, like the environment, the people and everything like that. To be honest, I mean, as much as I love to travel and see, I don't think I'd want to live anywhere else.
It's really interesting though you say that, because I think in terms of, I was just having a bit of a reflection when you were talking about the compassionate side of the German people and how you experienced that firsthand, and I was thinking about Australia when it comes to refugees and immigrants here. And as you know, since you've been here, there's been a lot of issues around the boat people coming into Australia and the way that they're treated and put into detention centres. And I remember when I came back from overseas to be here for a while, I spent a lot of time researching this and reading up on it, and I follow Australian celebrity who's very big into trying to make a change around this, and I'm actually quite disgusted in what I see about how the Australian government is treating these refugees at the moment. I think it's really disgraceful what they're having to go through.
You know, I feel the compassion. I mean, I feel compassion for them, having been a refugee and having been treated with so much respect and kindness. I feel bad for them. I don't follow closely to what's happening with them, and so I can't comment as to what the government is doing or not doing. But look, it's tough, you know, when you've left your whole family behind just so that you can survive. I can't imagine it.
Well, you know, I'll give everybody a bit of an update who's listening, because I think it is a very topical point in this country at the moment, and it's something that is being, I don't want to say that it's being swept under the carpet, but it certainly feels like that when you've got a lot of refugees who have spent a long period of time, we're talking about years, in detention centres where they've been. And these detention centres are not in Australia; they're off in remote islands in the Coral Sea and other places where the conditions, the climatical conditions alone are very, very testing and severe. They're a long way away from any significant medical support. There's a lot of mental health issues with people being detained, and a lot of times in isolation for long periods of time. You have that situation where we've seen it around the world at the moment, where police and security guards and those people that have a badge on, they seem to have power unto themselves, and they let rip with their egos, and these people are bashed and treated terribly poorly in a lot of situations. There's been a lot of situations where there's been rapes and murders and things like this, yet we don't see a lot of this in the Australian press every day, talking about, you know, what these poor people are going through. So, you know, it's something that I'm very conscious of, and I have a compassionate, you know, bone in my body that I actually worry about these people and what they're going through to try and start a new life, just like you did. And you know, you can say that you're a lucky one for sure, because you got through all that process and didn't have to endure what these poor people are having to go through today. So if you're out there listening to this and you've got some more information about what's happening in the Australian detention centres, I'd love to have a chat, because it's something that I'm very passionate about and would like to get involved in some capacity. So it's great to have one on our show that got through, though, and enjoying a good life. So when you got to Australia and started your new life, what was it like? It must have been like going to Disneyland, was it?
Yeah, I remember coming from Europe, where it was naturally like cold in winter, and even summers were not hot. I remember the first winter we would walk around just in singlets and short sleeves, and people used to look at us that we were strange. But when we arrived here, I was put into what was called language center, I think, English language center, because I didn't speak any English, and I went there for 6 months. My brother went directly to primary school because he was younger, and so he was able to pick it up a lot faster. And yeah, after 6 months, I was put into a high school close to our home here on the Northern Beaches, and yeah, made lots of friends. And my closest friend, funnily enough, I had met through the language center. She was half German and half Swedish, and we are friends to this day.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah.
Did many of the Aussie kids even know where the Czech Republic was?
Probably not.
No, I imagine so.
And they're somewhere in Europe, yeah. But yeah, look, again, I had, I was just accepted, and I didn't really have any problems, except the first day that I remember going to class in high school, and I was feeling almost confident that I could understand English and I could speak it a little bit. And I went into my first class, and it was an English class, and they were studying Shakespeare. And I went, oh my God, I have no clue what they're saying. So it's little things like that that kind of stick in your mind. But it's
foreign language to most, that one. Yeah. So what about, you've been in Australia for 40 years now, is that right?
40 years, that's it.
Even though you're 30, you've been here for 40 years.
Yeah, go figure.
So I'm interested. You're a business lady. You run your own business. you've been out there doing entrepreneur type things. How do you find equality in Australia as a businesswoman in Australia?
Again, no problems. I mean, I think what you put out, you receive back. I always treat people with respect, and I get treated with respect back. So for me, it's never been, you're a woman, and I've never been discriminated against, on at least not that I'm aware of. For me, where things were a little bit difficult was because when we came here, and obviously English wasn't my first language, I didn't make it to uni, so I kind of had to find my own way to figuring things out and how the business world worked. So for me, not having uni degree, that's kind of where I saw my weakness. But then as time went on and I learned, I guess I got a lot of hands-on experience, and I did work in the corporate world for about 10 years and with a couple of small businesses. So I picked up other skills along the way.
What did you do in the corporate world?
I worked in marketing as an assistant for a couple of years, and then actually it was more than a couple. It was probably like 5 or 6 years, and then I was in the customer service department at Johnson and Johnson, and then the company moved out near the airport, and it was a little too far for me to travel, so I went and found another job, and yeah.
Oh, you worked at J&J. Okay, so my number one question is: should we be all worried about the baby powder?
No, no.
Is it giving us all horrible diseases?
Oh my gosh,
toxins?
I know. It's like the things that we heard that were coming out in the media. That was crazy. But it's still around. Johnson. Everybody loves Johnson's baby powder. I still use it sometimes.
Did you enjoy working in the corporate world?
Yes and no. For me, initially, it was really exciting. I remember I went after I finished. So, because I didn't get into uni, I went into secretarial college, and I was there for a year. And then the first interview I went for, I was actually given the job. And I said, you know what? It's too local. I actually want to travel to work. I want to go into a big company. And so I declined my first job offer. And then when I was offered a job at Johnson & Johnson, I was excited because all of a sudden I was going to be all grown up and everything. And so initially it was great. I was learning a lot of things. But I also found out I'm not very good working for people. I'm much better working for myself. I didn't like the culture of like, well, you get an hour for lunch, or you get 3 weeks or 4 weeks for holidays, and so
you like to control your own destiny.
I do. And so that was the tough part. But I made some amazing friends, and I've met some incredible people, and I'm still in touch with them to this day. So absolutely no regrets, and I learned a lot. Not only about the business world, but also about myself. And so I think, whatever you do in your life, it shapes you. And if you learn from it, I think you should have no regrets.
So what did that 13-year-old girl who left the Czech Republic, what was her dream once she saw what was possible in the world in terms of freedom and all the things that you could do? Did you have a kind of a dream job that you wanted to try and get or do?
Well, I was always fascinated by technology. So even early on when the internet started, first of all, I remember my brother, he's a computer engineer. And so we always early on, we used to talk about computers and things like that. And I tried applying for a technology course, but I didn't get in because my English wasn't that good, and I don't think my marks were great. But my brother and I bought our first computer, and it cost us something like $2,000, and it had 20 megabyte hard drive. And we were so excited, and so we shared this computer, and so we're talking like 40 years ago almost. And so I think that's where I got my first taste for technology, and I've always been fascinated. And so when I finally decided to start my own business, going into web design, I guess that was the perfect job for me.
Mm.
Because I could work for myself. There's a creative aspect to it. There's the technology can be a bit challenging sometimes, but yeah, I love what I do. So I think at the time when I was 13, I had no idea what I was going to do. And I think, you know, maybe life will evolve and maybe I will end up doing something else. But for the time being, I'm incredibly happy doing what I do.
That's good to hear. Have you got many role models in terms of people that inspire you in the world?
You know what? I have to say, I look at my parents and I think they were definitely my role models in shaping who I've become as a parent and as an adult, because I look at them, and especially now that we're looking at the 40 years that we've been here, thinking about what it would have been like for them to pack up everything and just go into the unknown world. That's pretty amazing. And when I reflect on that, I go, wow, they had a lot of guts. I don't know if I'd be able to do it. And the other person that really inspires me is my son. He just blows me away. He's now 19, and the things he's been able to achieve and do in his life, you know, now he gives me a hard time because now he's more the parent than I am. But so those are my family and my friends. I draw inspiration. I look at everybody. I see the positive, and that's where I draw most of my inspiration and motivation, from family and friends.
That's terrific. What's your son doing? What's his dreams in life?
Well, at the moment, he's just he is studying engineering at university, although he is just about to switch over to business. He's decided that engineering is probably not what he expected, and so he's applied to do a business degree. But as far as to what he wants to do, I'm not sure yet. I don't think he's quite figured it out yet. It's only his first year at uni.
Professional football player.
Soccer player.
Soccer player. There we are. So he loves the soccer, does he?
He does. He plays with his friends on the weekends, and I go, and I'm one of those annoying soccer mums on the sidelines still.
Oh, you are. You're a cheerleading soccer mum.
I am.
Do you wear a scarf?
A scarf? Oh God, no.
You don't wear a scarf. I kind of have this picture in my mind that most mothers that go along and watch soccer games have got a scarf around their neck with whatever colour the team is. And
no, it's just a local team, but we have so much fun, and I think because it's not like a rap team or anything like that. So we've got the family and friends. We all come and cheer on the sidelines, and it's a very nice community feel, and yeah.
So what's it like having a 19-year-old son in this day and age?
Well, you know what? I look at him, and he's so much taller than I am, and I can't believe where the last 19 years have gone. Because I remember being told that I was pregnant, and the first thing that went into my mind is, oh my God, what school is he going to go to? This was even before I knew whether it was a boy or a girl, and I freaked out. But the day he was born, I remember I looked at him and I thought, I want to give you the world. And you're going to make me cry, because even now, just thinking about it. And so for me, what was really important in raising him and teaching him was showing him the world and showing him different aspects from different cultures. And so his father is from Tonga, so he had a sort of a different upbringing. But we split up when Jordan was 2 years old, and so I then became a single parent. But for me, travel was incredibly important, and so any money that I saved, I would put it into travel. And I would, at the age of 4, we went to Europe with my parents, and we saw Greece and Czech Republic and Belgium, and so we did like 17 countries in a very short time. No, 17 flights in across 5 different countries, I think it was. And
Wow.
so for me, raising him so that he was aware of the world was really important. And I think it's shaped him into the person that he is today.
Does he have a relationship with his dad today?
He does. He doesn't see him all that often, but they do have a good relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because I've got a lot of friends from Tonga actually. So,
Oh, really?
yeah, and they're amazing people. They're such beautiful people.
They're very family oriented,
Yeah.
and so yeah. So yeah, Jordan has a bit of both, a bit of the Czech and a bit of the Tongan in him.
That's quite a mixture. I don't know if I've ever heard of a Tongan and Czech combination before. That's unique.
Yeah, actually, he said sometimes people think that he's from the Middle East.
You could almost paint in that idea, Czech and Tongan. That's very, very unique. Yeah, I was asking you, I was interested because I've never been a father in my life until now when I've got a 2.5-year-old puppy dog. And I'm getting all the sense of rushes of being a good dad and trying to be the best dad that I can to the dog, you know, and I spoil him rotten, of course, and
Of course.
he gets to do everything that a little boy his age would probably get to do, if not more. He probably gets to do more actually than...
It's the puppy eyes, isn't it?
Yeah, this one's got a real attitude though. I actually call him the terrorist because he's kind of like he's got this fluffy kind of woolly coat, and underneath it all is this terrorist attitude towards everything. So
Good on him. He's going after what he wants. I wouldn't call it terrorist. I would call it determined.
it's funny, we go to the park and everybody adores him, and you know, all the women in particular, they just dote over him.
And do they pay much attention to the dad?
And no. And I say to them, be careful because, you know, he's a terrorist in sheep's clothing, this one. And yeah, he's very, very smart. He's a cavoodle, so he's part poodle and part King Charles.
Oh, wow.
So he's a super intelligent dog. And he's funny when I'm doing podcasts actually, because he's always sitting next to me and he knows certain words that I'm about to say mean that the show's about to come to an end, and then it's going to be his time for attention, right? So
I thought I could hear a bark at the beginning. Was that...
Yeah, he was just saying go ahead, you can start now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I love that. You have your own director.
Actually, we had a chat yesterday. I'll tell you what happened. It was funny because we often have conversations, him and I, and yesterday I did a video with a new team member that I brought on to help me with my work here, and he got quite jealous. So he said to me last night, okay, hang on a minute, I've been sitting here next to you for all these podcast shows for the last year and you haven't given me a role or anything to do yet. So we had a bit of a conversation around that. And then I said to him, okay, what role would you like to do? How do you see yourself adding value to my organization? And this is serious. So this is how I have conversations with my dog. And he said, well, every time you put a photo of me up on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, you get, hundreds of people. Yeah, he loves the attention, right? So he said, I'm drawing attention to you and what you're doing because people love my photograph. Yeah. So I said, okay, well, how about we make you the World Peace Ambassador for the organization, right?
I love that.
Yeah. So that's his new role. So as of today, this morning, he started his new role, and he's had his first post on Facebook this morning as the World Peace Ambassador for my organization.
Well, I'm going to ask you this. So how does he get paid?
Well, that's the funny thing, because after we agreed to this, he said, okay, I want a pay rise because he already thinks he's getting paid. And I said, there's no pay rise. You get in there and start earning your keep. And that's what you have to worry about. So.
Oh, I love that.
He's
always
fast asleep snoring.
Story.
So yeah, Oscar is his name, and Oscar is the World Peace Ambassador for my organisation. So
beautiful. So he should be the face of on your new website.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's a good idea. So for everyone listening, we might as well break the news now while we're talking about it. Ivana's going to be building our new website at Humaneity, so that's going to be amazing. And if you're going to follow along, you can check us out on the Global Business Podcast show, because Ivana's going to be sharing all her tips about making magnificent websites. What do you find so fascinating about websites?
I love the creative side of building a website, and I love the challenge of driving traffic and just discovering what makes people tick and what makes people want to buy or hire people like me. So for me it's really about the creative process. And because I've been doing it that long, I've got kind of step-by-step process that I go through. And there's about 16 steps involved in creating a successful website. One of the most important things, though, I find that when people first come to you and they say, I want to rank number 1 on Google and things like that, and they don't think about anything else. But there is actually a lot that's involved, and unfortunately, what I see is a lot of the web builders that you see advertised on TV. They say, grab an image, put a bit of text, and you've got a website. And the truth is, it just doesn't. It doesn't work. Like, you have to have a lot more information, you have to have credibility, and you have to constantly test what is working, what's not. And it changes. It has evolved over the past 18 years so much. So
I bet it has.
So we will definitely have a chat, and each month we can offer some tips to help people that either have a website or that are just starting to think about. And we can probably even share our journey together as we build your website.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I've got to tell you a funny story, though, because my history with websites is quite hilarious. I worked for a big multinational company for many, many years, for decades, in fact. And of course, when I was in that role, I had nothing to do with websites. And you take it for granted that behind this big, massive, global company is this amazing website that's doing all its stuff, and you don't have any kind of connection to it unless you're working in the marketing area that's focusing on that, which I wasn't doing. So when I left that company after all those years and started my own thing, somebody came to me one day and said, where's your website? I said, what do you mean, where's my website? I haven't got one yet. And they said, well, you need a website for your new business, right? And I said, yeah, that's good. Who can I talk to? Anyway, I was put in touch with someone, long story short. And this person said to me, have you got a site map? I said, what's that? I knew how to get to your office. I don't need to have a map to get here. And they said, no, for your website. And I said, So I was introduced to all this new terminology around websites and web, building webs and web development and SEO and all this sort of stuff that I'd never ever heard of before. So it was quite an interesting journey to kind of do it from the ground up for the first time, and I won't tell you how many times I've gone and done it from there, but I find them to be, they're a bit like, I'll give you an analogy. I find websites are a bit like buying a boat.
Okay.
And the reason why is because, just like a boat, you can put lots and lots of money into websites, and you can do the same with a boat, and all it does at the end of the day is just keep you afloat.
Yeah, I like that.
That's the analogy, right? So if you don't put your money into your boat, sooner or later it's going to sink, and that's not a good place to be in a boat. And it's a bit like a website. If you don't invest in it, it's like your health, right? It's like everything you do in life. If you don't invest time and effort and, unfortunately, money into it, then you don't get the optimal reward.
Yeah. I usually liken building a website to building a house. You need a strong, solid foundation, and before you start. So having good hosting, having decent domain name, understanding who your customer is, that sort of thing. And I think a lot of people, I'm very impressed that you even know what a sitemap is, because most people wouldn't know what it is. So maybe we'll cover that as one of the topics.
I'll tell you what, though, what I did love about the process the first time that I did it was, it actually makes you really think hard about your business, and I think that's good for anybody, particularly a startup person that's starting their own business for the first time. Is that the way that you communicate your business via online is such an important thing, and asking yourself, what is your why? What are you delivering to these customers, and how are they engaging with you, and what do you expect from them in return? How are you gonna communicate with them? And it makes you think a lot about your business that I think if you didn't go through that process, you probably overlook a little bit. So
yeah,
I find it's quite therapeutic. I guess that's what I say.
You know what? I think a lot of people don't go into it thinking like that. People don't so much think about what the customer is looking for, what their problems are that they're solving. I think, or it has been my experience and I was guilty of this when I first started, was thinking, well, this is the service or this is the product that I'm going to offer, but not really understanding all the ins and outs that the customer really needs. And I think that's the main reason why a lot of businesses fail or they don't make that much money, is because they don't give their customers the solution to a problem that the customer is actually needing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's because they've gone and if we're talking specifically about a website here, that's because they've gone and built something where they think they know what the customer wants rather than actually getting the information from the customer.
That's exactly right. Yeah. But I agree with you in terms of when you're building a website, it makes you think, it makes you reflect. And you know what? The way I look at it, my website is now my greatest asset, because I've built in a lot of tutorials, I've done website reviews, and I share that with people that come and visit. And I've had incredibly positive feedback, people saying, it's like you explain things that I can understand. And so for me, if somebody is wanting to know about, what domain name to register, so instead of me spending, hours on the phone with them, explaining it to them, I send them to a tutorial that I've put together on registering domain names and coming up with domain names. So I think your website should be the center of your business universe, and not only for your customers, but you can use it for yourself as well.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely right. I'm glad to hear you talking about some of these things. Talking about domain names, I was finding out the other day, and this kind of went over my head for so long. Some of these domain names are worth a lot of money, huh?
Oh my goodness, there's thousands and thousands of dollars that can be made potentially.
Yeah, do you know anyone out there that's actually doing that for a living?
No, I don't.
No?
Okay. I've been approached by people wanting to buy a domain name that was going to be costing a lot of money, but I'm not involved. In Australia, it's regulated, so your domain name has to link to your business somehow. So I couldn't probably register shoesonline.com because I don't sell shoes, but .com.au. So the .com.au extensions are regulated, and it's to a lesser degree now than it was a few years ago. But with .com domain names, you can register just about anything. The thing is, it's getting harder and harder because, so many people went out and they bought so many different domain names, and if it's highly desirable, then it can cost thousands of dollars. But look, for most small business owners, I said, don't waste your money on that.
Just get what you need and move on.
Yeah, even if you have to change your company name slightly sometimes, or add an extra word or something like that, you're better off spend $1,000 instead of a domain name, spend it on marketing. Yeah,
exactly. Or going to a business lunch. There's another good idea.
For $1,000, sure.
Go and have a nice lunch somewhere.
Yeah, that's true. Have lunch with somebody you can potentially network or collaborate with, and there you go. That's it's paid for itself.
Look, we laugh at that, but I used to spend the majority of my corporate life doing that, and that's where the deal's done. It's done over the socializing aspect of it in the majority of cases, and keeping relationships to the level that you need to have them, especially when you're dealing in global business. It's even more important because you don't get to see these people every day, and when you do, you've got to make it count, right? So people buy off people. That's the end of it.
That's absolutely right.
That's what happens, right, in business. So if you weren't building websites today, what do you think you'd be doing? What's your next choice of work if you had to do something else?
If I had to do something else, and look,
Soccer coach.
I wouldn't. You know what? No, definitely not. I don't understand the rules. I just watch my boy running up and down, and I'm just, in awe. But I have no clue what actually goes into a game.
It's probably a good thing, because I don't think he'd want you to be having too much input to what he's doing. Yeah, just leave him alone. Let him do his thing. He has
no choice. I'm his mother. No, but you know what? Because I think when I touched up on it earlier, when Jordan was little and I was a single parent and I wanted to travel, but I didn't have a lot of money. So, had to pay the bills, had to pay everything else. But I really wanted to show him the world. And I came across this website called Weekend Notes that a friend of mine told me. And she said, well, you can write reviews of places you've been and, things you have done, and you actually get paid for it. And I went, wow, that's like my dream job, because I get to go to all these amazing places and go on these incredible adventures, and then I get to write about it and get paid for it. And so that's what I started doing. So early on, other than creating websites, I would take Jordan, I'd take him out of school and we'd go whale watching or dolphin cruise or whatever. And then I would write about it and I'd get paid for it. And
Wow.
Of course, then everything, I could write things off that we did because it was earning me money. So I found a way to do this. And for us, like by the time he was 10 years old, he had done so much and he had seen so much. And for me, that was very soul filling, I guess. And I think, so that's what I think I would like to do, is just to travel the world and experience more adventures. And of course now Jordan won't travel with me, but I need a travel partner. That's what I need. And so that's what I'd love to do, and just write about places. So maybe more like a travel blogger. I think that would be my next step.
There you go. Well, you better listen to a lot of my podcast shows, because I've had, I don't know how many I've had, probably 15 travel bloggers from around the world.
Fantastic.
And they all talk about, their evolution as a travel blogger, why they started and how hard it was to get going. And now some of them are doing very well. Like, they're living the life of Riley.
So
until
what was
now,
some
of
of
course.
their motivation for starting?
Well, it's really interesting. A lot of them came out of the corporate world, yeah? So I think the corporate world does that to you, right? You get to that stage where it's either, we call it burnout, I guess, but, you wake up one day and you go, hang on a minute, am I going to do this for the rest of my life? Yeah. And I would say, statistically, if I look back on those episodes, I'd say probably 80% of them came out of the corporate world.
Wow.
And it's been really interesting, though, to watch their evolution, because, some of them I did shows way back in the beginning of my podcast career, and some of them have given up now and they've gone back to the corporate world, and some of them have, gone on to bigger and bigger things within the travel blogging world. So, it's like anything in life, what you put into it, how hard you're prepared to work and do all those things. But it's interesting in these days, because I had a guy on my show the other day who's an influencer, and overnight his international travel stopped, and I was asking him about, how does an influencer, in inverted brackets, make a living when you're not able to travel anywhere? And he was fortunate enough that he's working with some very large global brands, and they turned around and said, okay, we're now going to redesign our digital online marketing strategy, and this is what we're going to do as far as your involvement. And they came up with a lot of domestic content that they wanted created, and he was going to be the face of that. And it's good to see. I was going to talk to you today about COVID-19 and the impacts of it, because I see so many amazing things happening around the world where this period of time, and let's acknowledge also, there's a lot of people that have died, there's a lot of people that are sick, and it's been terrible for a lot of people. But I think it's been great from the point of view that it's allowed business owners to sit down and take a reflection on where their business is at. And some people have closed the doors not just because of COVID-19, but saying, hang on a minute, wasn't what I was really passionate about.
That's right. They got slapped upside the head and they go, why am I still doing this? Why
am I doing this?
My tail?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I think that's a great thing, because if it's connecting people to their new purpose in life, then that's got to be a good thing for not only their mental health, but also, moving forward and being energized to start something new, and, learning new skills and all the rest of it. I think is great for everybody. And the other side of it is that it's allowed companies to say, okay, we need to be different now to be noticed, right? And it's not just
Yeah.
about redoing their website, is it? It's about, all the things that the way that, look at how restaurants reacted with takeaways overnight. Or, you could go to your favorite restaurant and all of a sudden you get takeaway overnight instead of going and sitting down.
Yeah, that's right. And so many businesses, I've been actually surprised at how quickly businesses have been able to adapt. Like what you were saying about restaurants or even gyms, they've taken things online, offering classes online. And
Yeah.
so people have embraced technology, which is super exciting for me, because all of a sudden people are not as afraid as they were before. And it's only because they've been forced into it. And I think sometimes we all need a bit of a kick up the behind to do.
I wish I had
take
a
us to
dollar
the
for
next
every
level.
time. I wish I had a dollar for every time I heard the word Zoom being used in the last 4 months.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah, it's, we look at these dark times and think, okay, the world's in a crazy state and all these things are going on, but there's so much opportunity around us as well. And there's so many positive things that come out of this. I'm also really thrilled to see that a lot of people have used this time to look at their own health and to get their health sorted out. And you and I have got something to talk about there, because you're a cancer survivor and you went on your own journey. So how was that for you when you came out of that process, and how difficult it was for you?
Well, for me, it was. It was Friday the 13th, would you believe it, that I was given the news. And it was a slap across the face, because I wasn't expecting it. I had no symptoms. I was feeling perfectly fine. And it was only discovered because I had a routine mammogram. And so it totally shook my world. I was healthy. I had my son. Everything was going well, my business. And all of a sudden, virtually overnight, I had to go and have surgery and chemotherapy and radiation. And so I got onto what I call the cancer bus. And why I liken it to that is basically the medical community. They just put you on this process, which is kind of like getting on the bus, and then they tell you where to get off. So that, my first stop was surgery, and then I get back on, and the next stop was chemotherapy, and genetic testing and all sorts of testing and stuff. And so for me, it was tough initially until I knew what I was dealing with and what treatments I was going to have to undergo. But once I had a plan, it was a lot easier. And then, so I think once we came to COVID-19, I kind of had used my cancer journey as a reference in how to deal with life in this crisis. And so really my cancer journey helped me with what we're dealing with now. I have zero regrets. I think it is honestly one of the best things that had happened to me. And I think, years down the line, many people will look at COVID-19 and just go, you know what, it's the best thing that could have happened to us. Because I think we take things for granted oftentimes, and I think this will make us more grateful for everything that we have, and especially in Australia. And it makes us do things that maybe we wouldn't have had the guts to do before.
Yeah, I agree totally. And I think that when we look at Australia as the lucky country, I think a lot of people, say that in jest in terms of, not really understanding. And if you haven't been someone who's traveled to a lot of poorer nations around the world and haven't had that opportunity, I don't say going to Bali for a holiday is actually immersing yourself in, it's like going to one of the Sydney beaches, isn't it, up there? It's just crazy. But yeah, you're right. And I never want to wish hardship upon anybody, but I think at the same time, if a situation in life is realigning you to a better purpose and goal, then all for it. And I think, we're in a situation like a lot of places around the world at the moment where the economic impact of what's happening with the pandemic hasn't really been materialized just yet. And I think we're going to see that in the next few months in this country. And as a result of that, there's going to be some real shake-up in terms of people's lifestyles and all the rest of it. And I see that as a good thing, because when you read the statistics and you see that a country like Australia is the number one country in the world for household debt, everybody's living on credit beyond their means, 120% of income. Those things are fundamentally wrong. You know, my grandfather taught me to live within my means, right? He was the guy that said to me, if you don't earn enough to buy it, don't buy it.
Wow.
You know,
I wish your grandfather had spoken to me too.
Simple as that. And, you know, I watch in my neighborhood here where I am, and, you know, there's 2 or 3 SUVs parked in the driveway of some of these homes, and they're massive homes, and they've got 2 people and 1 kid living in these houses. And I'm thinking, okay, well, that's all good. I think people should have nice things if they want them, but really there's, you know, as you say, you've been a fantastic mother and enthralled upon your child to travel a lot. And I think traveling is the best investment you can give anybody in your family.
Yeah, you know what, I saw this, I don't know, I think it was a meme, and it just said, the best stories are found between the pages of a passport. And that has always stuck with me.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that on my travel show.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's you know, when we're taken out of our comfort zone, that things really, really change. And that's why I said, you know, for me, cancer, life needed to take me out for a little while. I needed to spend 6 months on the sofa watching The Bachelor and just resting, because I was really tired, and I didn't realize how I had run myself to the ground. Being a single parent, being a business owner, I never really took care of myself. I never really, you know, I was very good at making excuses why I can't exercise, because, you know, I had 10,000 emails to answer. So life decided, look, time to, you know, check out for a little while. And that's what I did. And so that's why I think it was the best thing, because not only has it shown me sort of it's okay to just look after yourself, but life will go on. And that's what I saw at the beginning of COVID-19. Things were feeling so out of control, and we didn't know which way it was going to go, and sort of how the impact that it was going to have on us, not only on our businesses, but our health and everything else. But I knew that eventually we would come out on the other end, and that we would be okay. Our new normal would look different, but we would be okay, the same way that I came out on the other side of cancer. And honestly, I came out a lot stronger, because I looked at it and I thought, you know what, if cancer didn't kill me, doing whatever I decide to do is probably not going to kill me either. Had I been speaking to, well, had this been 3 years ago, I probably wouldn't be speaking to you, because I was too, I guess, caught up in maybe my own insecurities, thinking, you know, I've got nothing to contribute to the world. And so, I would have been too afraid to try something new, such as talking on a podcast or doing a video. And then I just decided, you know what, it's not going to kill me, so let's give it a go.
I want to go back to what you said at the beginning of that part, was you were laying on the couch watching episodes of The Bachelor. Do you really think that was therapeutic?
Yes. That was the best therapy. Other than my mum's chicken soup, yes, I needed to watch The Bachelor. Please don't judge me on that.
But in all seriousness, I think that whenever you're confronted with a life and death situation on your journey, that is the ultimate wake-up call in terms of putting a lot of things into perspective in your life, right? And
absolutely.
Typically during that phase as well, you are either bedridden or you're slowed down to a trot, and you've got to look at the world in a different light. And when I say you've got to, you're forced to look at the world in a different light. You don't have an alternative, because, you know, I had a situation where, actually this is a really funny story. So I was living in Singapore for 7 years, and during that time I met a wonderful lady, and I used to have a motorbike back in those days, and I used to go riding my motorbike every weekend over in Malaysia. So I went across the causeway from Singapore and rode my motorbike around Malaysia. Anyway, I met this lady, and I said to her, right, for our first date, would you like to go away on a motorbike trip? And I thought that was rather ambitious, asking someone to go on a motorbike trip for your first date. But it was kind of a test, because I thought, okay, if I'm going to be interested in this woman, then if she says yes to going away on a motorbike trip for a weekend, then, it's somebody I'm going to be interested in, because she's a bit adventurous and she wants to get out there and enjoy the world. So she said yes, and I thought, oh, great, okay, fantastic. So Friday night I picked her up after work on the motorbike, and we rode off heading towards Malaysia. Now, instead of this being a lovely romantic under the stars motorcycle journey, this turned into a trip from hell. And
oh no!
First of all, we had a torrential tropical downpour moments after I picked her up from work. So we're sitting on the motorbike, we're both sopping wet, and it was miserable, absolutely miserable. We got stuck in the passport control process going across the Singapore border into Malaysia for about 3 hours. So we're stuck on the motorbike in the pouring rain for about 3 hours. And I actually remember turning around to her at one stage and saying, do you want to go home? Like, I'll get you a taxi home if you want to go home, right? And anyway, finally we had to travel for about 4 hours that night, and it was just before midnight, and we got to this beautiful beach resort place that I had booked for the weekend.
Oh, wow.
And I had done the gentlemanly thing and got us separate rooms and all the rest of it. So she got off the bike, sopping wet, into her room, cleaned herself up. We both slept apart the night, and I said, okay, I'll meet you down on the beach in the morning for breakfast. We'll have breakfast on the beach and go for a walk. And I was trying to be romantic and all that stuff. And she agreed to that. So the next morning we were down there on the beach, and it was a beautiful, white sand, turquoise water. It was just the idyllic scene. And I said, why don't we go for a walk along the beach before we have breakfast, and we'll come back to the resort and have breakfast. She agreed to that. So away we went. And
there's no tsunami coming, is there?
Well, no, but it's worse than that, actually. It's worse than a tsunami. So I'm thinking, okay, well, this is really strange, because there's no one else on the beach. Like, it was deserted, and I knew there was lots of people staying at the resort, so I was wondering, why isn't there anyone on the beach, right? So we walk along, and then I said to her, we got about halfway along this beach, and I said, do you want to go in for a swim? And she said, yeah, okay. So I took off my top that I had on, and I just had a pair of shorts, and I dived into the water, and I started swimming out a little bit off the beach. And she took her top off, and she had a bikini on, and I was getting all excited by what I was watching back on the beach. And she jumped into the water, and as she was coming out, she was kind of walking out rather than swimming out to where I was. I put my foot down, and I stood on top of a sea snake.
Oh no.
And it bit me on the foot. And not only did it bite me on the foot, it actually held onto my foot. And I didn't know what it was. I thought I just stood on a crab or something, right? So I lifted my leg out of the water. You should have seen the look on her face. And I had the snake hanging off the end of my toe where it had bitten onto my foot, because normally, unless you really upset them, they're not going to do anything to hurt you. But I actually must have stood right on top of the head of this snake. And it grabbed onto my toe. It injected its venom into me straight away, and it was still hanging onto my foot. Anyway, she looked at me. She said, "What's that?" And I said, "It's a sea snake, and it's just bit me, right?" And she goes, "Oh my God, what do we do?" And I said, "You better go back and get some help from the resort, yeah, because I don't know what's going to happen. I've got poison going into my body right now, right?"
Yeah.
So she ran away and left me there. And I was in about, I don't know, knee deep, I guess, of water. And I started to feel lightheaded. I started to feel faint. And I thought, oh no, she's gone and I'm going to drown. Like I'm going to pass out in the water.
Why didn't you get out of the water?
Well, I was trying to, but I had flicked the snake off, by the way. So the snake had gone, taken off into the water somewhere. And it was excruciating pain. Like the pain came immediately in my foot.
Ah,
So I was hopping. I was trying to hop kind of towards the beach.
okay.
And I was probably about 30 meters out. Okay, so that gives you an indication
Oh,
how far
wow.
out I was.
Okay.
So by the time I did actually get to the beach, I almost passed out. Like I was really, really faint. And I was kind of just in where the waves were just hitting the shore. And I looked up and I couldn't see her. I couldn't see anybody. And I just said, I've just got to lie here. And so what I tried to do was I got the salt water and I tried to wash the wound where the snake had bitten me, because there was blood pouring out of it, right? Like it was very obvious where the snake had bitten me. So I was cleaning that as much as I could with salt water, thinking that was going to do something good. And then I looked up at the beach and I saw her running. It was like a scene out of Baywatch. You know, there was a girl running down the beach in a bikini with 3 guys on each side of her running, and I almost had that slow motion vision of Baywatch opening
And
scene.
what's his name? David Hoffman?
Yeah, David Hasselhoff. Yeah.
Hasselhoff. Yeah.
And they were running towards me, although I wasn't that happy about it all at that time because it was a bit painful. And they got to me, and one of the guys looked at me and said, sea snake. And I said, yes, sea snake. And he said, I should never swim here now. Should never swim here. And that's why there was no one else on the beach, because everybody else had been told that it wasn't the right time of the year to go swimming, right?
Oh.
But there were no signs up or anything. So I stood on this thing. They grabbed me. And then I said, okay, what to do? Oh, we have to get hospital now. You die. Like this, right?
What?
Yeah. So I'm like, oh my God, where's the hospital? And they said,
Australia.
Kuala Lumpur, right? Which was 4 hours away, okay? And I said, hang on a minute, we can be back in Singapore in 4 hours. If you're going to take me to KL, I'd rather be in a hospital in Singapore than I would be in KL. So I said to the girl, this was our first...
4 hours? I thought it travels a lot faster.
No, well, it does. So I've got to tell you what happened, right? Because this story gets worse.
Oh, Jesus.
And this is my first date with this lady, right? And I'm like, this is a really good way to impress somebody, is ending up in hospital on the first
dying
date. Or dying. Yeah, or dying. Anyway, I said to her, right, go back to your room, get all your stuff, get all the motorbike gear, because we had helmets and leather gear and all that sort of stuff. I said, get all that. Make sure you get the passports, because we've got to get back into Singapore. And these guys can carry me to the car. And we didn't have a car, but they carried me to one of their vehicles, and the guy offered to drive me back to Singapore for an X amount of money, right? So we got in this car, and I was laying in the back seat. The lady that was my date partner at the time was sitting in the front seat next to the driver. And I said to him, I could feel this poison going through my body, and I thought, this is not going to end well, because this is really, really starting to hurt. I was having pain like I'd never experienced in my life. And I said, you drive back to Singapore like Michael Schumacher, yeah? You just, you go as fast as you possibly can. So this guy drove like an absolute maniac to get me back to Singapore. But on the way, I thought I was going to die about 3 times. So the first time, what was happening, the pain in my leg, well, the pain in my whole body, the poison had gone right throughout my body, and it was just getting worse and worse. And you know, in the back seat of a car, you have a lot of times in a lot of cars, you have the handles in the roof where you...
Yeah.
They're there just to hold on to, right? Well, I was holding on to those, and I was in so much pain that I actually pulled the roof lining off the car.
Oh, my God.
On the inside of the car, because the pain was so bad, right? And I said to the guy, don't worry, I'll pay you for the damage I do to your car on the way, because obviously this was getting worse. We got back to Singapore. We got back to the Malaysian side of the border in Singapore, and there's a traffic queue for about a mile long, right? So we couldn't get through customs. So I told the guy to get out of the car, run up to the border control people in the little box, tell them we've got a medical emergency. The lady in the front seat, my date partner, let's call her my date partner, she'd rung forward to the Singapore side of the hospital and got an ambulance to come to the other side of the border in Singapore to pick me up.
Oh, wow.
So they carried me across the border. I think I'm probably being one of the only people that were carried on a stretcher across the border between Malaysia and Singapore on an ambulance stretcher with 4 guys on a Saturday afternoon. They put me in the ambulance, and then I passed out. I went unconscious on the way to hospital. And I woke up, I don't know how much longer it was. I think it was the next day, actually. I woke up in hospital. And there was a doctor standing next to me, and he said to me, sea snake bite, I understand. I said, yeah. And I said, what are you going to do? And he said, well, we can't do anything because we don't know what kind of snake it was. It's too late to give you any anti-venom.
Oh.
But we have a problem. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, look down at your foot. And I hadn't looked at my foot at this stage. And my foot had swollen up like the size of one of those footballs that your son kicks around on a Saturday afternoon. Yeah.
Oh my God.
And he said, we're going to have to amputate your foot. And I said, hang on a minute. What do you mean we're going to have to amputate? He said, well, the poison has turned your foot into gangrene, and there's going to be a big problem here. Yeah. And if we don't stop the poison going further, could go up to your heart and you'll stop breathing.
Oh.
So as you know, when you get immediate medical news that life is about to end or can be very bad, your head goes into a completely different space, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And hence the reason of saying the story, because if you're confronted with this life and death situation...
So what happened? What happened? I want to know what happened.
You want to... Okay, so, well, it actually gets worse because...
Oh, no!
I was in so much pain still, and no matter how much they gave me in terms of morphine, which they were filling me up to the limit of what I could have, it wasn't getting rid of the pain, right? So that actually handcuffed me to the bed because I was thrashing around in pain and everything. And then he said, okay, I'm going to have to unlock your hands for a minute because we need you to sign this document to say it's okay to amputate your foot. And I said, no, you're not amputating my foot, so leave the handcuffs on, right? And he said, well, then I need you to sign the document to say you refuse to have your foot amputated because the chances of death now have just increased significantly. Anyway, long story short, and it's already been a long story, but I thought I'd tell you this. And I said to this lady who had stuck with me the whole time, she was there by my bedside, she wouldn't leave, she wouldn't go home. I told her to go home and forget about me and all the rest of it. She said, no, I'm going to look after you, and I was with you and all this. So she was a keeper, right? I thought, I've got to keep this one, right? And then they moved me into a kind of a separate room because I was making so much noise. I was screaming at the top of my lungs with the pain, and I was making a bit more of a noise in the emergency area than they wanted, so they got rid of me and put me in an isolated room. And while I was in that room, I said to her, I said, listen, get the keys and get me out of these handcuffs. And she said, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I'm an athlete, and I know that the first thing about any kind of injury is to get the blood flowing around your body. Yeah. And when I'm lying down like this, the blood is not helping, it's not getting to my foot, and it's not helping the healing process, right? And I said, I'll sit on this bed for the next, I don't know how long it needs to take, and just move my foot around doing exercises and trying to get the blood flow, and hopefully the swelling will go down, right?
And so this is despite the fact that you were in so much pain.
Yeah, exactly. So they had a surgeon come in after that. So the surgeon comes in, and this story I'm sharing is not to say anything against the Singapore medical process. It was fantastic. They were all very, very fantastic, and were trying to do the best to look after me, but I didn't want to lose my foot.
Of course.
And so I sat there, and the surgeon came in. He said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm going to do this exercise. And I was literally sitting on the side of the bed with my leg down, doing circles with my foot. That's what I was doing, right? And he said, what are you doing that for? And I said, I'm getting the blood moving again. And I said, I'm going to get the swelling down. And then I said, if I want to do a deal with you, okay? I said, if I get the swelling down, you're going to take away this option of taking off my foot. And he said, yeah, that'll be okay. So I said, okay then. So do you know what, Ivana? I sat there for 12 hours moving my foot around on the side of that bed. And after 12 hours, he came back, and the swelling had reduced, I'd say about 70 or 80%. It had gone.
Wow. And
the pain started to reduce. And that was the beginning of my recovery. I was in hospital for another 12 days after that, before I was released. But the danger of losing my leg. But the point of the whole story was, as we were talking about before, it's not until you're actually confronted with a situation like you had with cancer, or I had with the potential of losing a leg and potentially losing my life, or COVID-19, or losing your job, that you don't actually wake up in life and say, right, I've got to look at things differently now. Yeah.
Absolutely.
and start to take a different course. So yeah, that was the sea snake bite story that.
And so
I've
what
told.
happened to the date?
Well, we ended up going out for a few years, which was really nice, and she's a wonderful lady. We didn't make it through the end of the process because when I left Singapore, she didn't want to go and live overseas anywhere, so
Fair enough.
unfortunately that was the end of it. But yeah, lovely lady, and saved my life that day, that's for sure.
Oh my God. I can't.
Yeah.
Wow. What a story. What a story. Like you could write a book about like a dating on how not to go on a date.
Well, I tell you what, I've had 7 near-death experiences. That was one of them. So I'm not going to go through all of them now, but
Oh, wow.
I've been blessed. So let's just say it at that stage. Yeah.
My goodness. Yeah.
That was the only one with a woman involved, so I can't tell you anymore with ladies involved. But I something I wanted to ask you, because you told me previously about your cancer situation. I've just told you that particular story that I've experienced. I've been quite fascinated recently about actually having a conversation about the end of life, because when I was living in Singapore, I went to a really amazing workshop one weekend called The Art of Dying.
Oh.
And the reason I went to it wasn't morbid, it was actually a joyous thing. And I'm writing a book at the moment, and the book is about my last 25 days of my father's life.
Okay.
And I'm not only finding it therapeutic, I'm finding it really insightful, remembering what happened in those last days of my father's life and how that relationship between him and I went to a level that we never had before. So my father's passing ended up being a very joyous thing in that context, that we got to have a relationship that we never had for the previous stage of our lives, right? And I was wondering why, as a society, we don't talk a lot about the end of life, do we? We don't talk about the planning side of it, because when I went through that process with him, there was lots of hospitals involved, there was palliative care, all those sorts of things that we don't talk about, we don't prepare for. In a lot of cases, I know that some people do, but in a lot of cases we don't. And I'd actually like to think of the end of life as a more positive and joyful thing than seeing it as a morbid thing. What are your thoughts around that?
You know what? I remember when Jordan was in primary school, there was a young girl who was, I think she was a year older than he was, and she was born with problems with her kidneys, and as a result she'd had I think a couple of kidney replacements. Anyway, her kidney had just been replaced and things were not looking that well, and they were fearing that she would die. And I had heard about her being in hospital and having a conversation with her grandmother, who was looking after her, about what she wanted her funeral to look like. She said, I don't want anybody to wear black. I want everybody to be in fun colors. And, this is the music that I want played. And I thought, wow, like a girl at the age of maybe 12, 13, talking about her death, but not actually being afraid of it and planning it so that she can do it the way she wanted it. And I thought, that must have taken so much strength, and both on her part, but also her family's part. And I always think of that story, and I agree with you. I mean, I think we should be celebrating life, but I think oftentimes because, death can be painful, I think that's the part that we fear the most. It's how are we going to get to the other side. And and for me, and I think this is how I've lived my life, is having, I fear that I would regret something that I haven't done. And I've got a story that I do, which is probably relevant, that what's kind of driven my whole life and decisions that I've made. And it goes back to when I was in my 20s. My best friend's sister was working in a nursing home, and this was kind of like a last stop nursing home. People were there basically going there to die. And my friend told me, she said, we've got two kinds of people. She said, we've got people who are here, they're happy, and they've, lived life on their own terms, and they know it's the end, and they're ready for it. She said, on the other hand, we have people here who are angry and mean, and they also know that they're going, they don't have much time, but they know that they hadn't done what they wanted to do in their life. And when she told me that, I thought, I never want to be the angry, mean person at the end of my life. And so whenever I've made a decision about anything, I thought, I don't want to regret not having done something. And so I've taken risks and done things, sometimes probably my parents wouldn't have agreed with, but I just never wanted to have regrets.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really, really, really interesting. And I think that there's it's like a lot of things in life. Like people say that, people say something like, I want to live a healthier lifestyle, so I'll start exercising as an example. But then they'll go and eat junk food afterwards, and they'll do other things that are counterproductive to that process. So when it comes to getting the most out of life, do you have any kind of rituals or routines that you measure against making sure that you're doing that? How do you measure your success to terms of getting the most out of your life?
You know what? I just look at it at how I feel inside, how I...
Yep.
What my mental state is. And naturally, I've always been very positive. So I always look for something to look forward to, whether it is my favorite TV show, or it might be a trip coming up with friends, or, a catch up with family. So I always have something positive to look forward to, and that's what generally drives me. That's kind of my routine. So sometimes, and we all get in our heads, and especially with COVID-19 and being stuck at home, I found a way to cope, and a lot of it came through my cancer journey, and that's to distract myself until the crazy thoughts stop. And sometimes it's work, sometimes it's just picking up the phone and calling a friend. But I have to tell you, like when I was going through chemotherapy, and we were kind of in a special section of the chemotherapy sort of section, because we had something called cold caps. I don't know if you've heard of cold caps, but what it is, it's they basically freeze your scalp to help prevent hair loss. And so at the Cancer Institute where I was having my treatments, there were a lot of people in all different sections, but there was this one particular section, and there were the four of us, because they had four cold caps. And so we had this bond, and I remember we would laugh so much, because in that moment when you've got poison being pumped through your blood, you have a choice. You either laugh and make it as pain-free as you can, or you go down the other path. And I did see one young girl who had just been given the diagnosis, and she wasn't coping. But most of us, we were a little bit older. I think we had the life experiences behind us, and I had not laughed as much as I did the time that I was sitting there in chemotherapy. And that's why I always look at that time, and I am so thankful, because it made me appreciate life so much more, and I don't sweat the small stuff anymore. Like, we all worry about what other people think of us, and what's going to happen tomorrow, and I just live in the moment now. So many gifts from my cancer journey, and it's the gift that keeps on giving.
When you were first diagnosed, did you reflect for a moment on the options available in terms of treatment? Did you consider it all a holistic approach, or did you go straight into, okay, I'm going to get chemo here and go for it?
You know what? I kind of look at, like, when people come to me to have their website designed, they coming to me because they know I have the experience. And I decided, and on my journey, is I would go to the people who have been doing this the most. And so whatever my oncologist decided that I needed, I was going to do. And she said to me, look, because mine was only stage 1 cancer, she said, you don't have to have chemotherapy. And I said, but if I was your daughter, what would you recommend? And she said, I would recommend you have it because it reduces the chances of it coming back by, can't remember what the percentage was. So I put myself in their hands because I knew that this is what they did every day, all day. And I did watch some documentaries on alternative healing, but I thought, you know what, again, I don't want to regret not having done something, and I'd rather go through chemotherapy and make sure that they catch it the best way that they can. And so I trusted them, I trusted my doctors, they got me through it, and you know, I will always be grateful.
Are you a religious person?
I wouldn't say religious, I'd say more spiritual.
Okay, so in terms of practicing spirituality, are there any rituals that you adopt on that process?
I think just being grateful, for me, every morning waking up with gratitude for everything that I have, and even going through COVID-19 and looking at what people in maybe developing countries have or don't have, and then appreciating everything that I do have, and how lucky I am to be surrounded by so many people. So for me, it's that, and and talking to friends and family about things that are really important to me, that I found that really useful. And you know, my spirituality, I guess, came out a little bit more than sort of, I think when you talk about spirituality, people often go, oh, that voodoo stuff, that weird stuff that, you know, people, that they do. And so I kind of relied on that going through my journey, and it's what kept me positive.
Do you meditate?
I did, yes. I did do a lot of meditation throughout after I watched the Bachelor episodes. But yes, meditation. Well, the funny thing is the doctors were saying, you know, you should do at least yoga. And I'm like, going to the bathroom is like, that's a big, you know, ask for me to do. I said, I'm not exercising. I can't move out of bed. I can't do anything. So I listened to my body for the first time ever, and I rested as much as I needed to. And maybe I should have exercised, but you know what? It was what it was, and I did the best that I could at the time.
So you don't meditate today?
Oh, I do these days. Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yep. Not as much as I did probably during my cancer journey, but I still do, yeah.
How many hours sleep a night do you get?
Not an awful lot, unfortunately. I tend to sleep sort of between probably about 4 to 6 hours every night, and so I tend to have a little nap in the middle of the day sometimes.
So do you feel rested when you get up, or do you still feel a bit tired?
It depends. It goes from day to day. Some days I'm up and going for walks and things like that, and other days not so much. And so that's when I again listen to my body and I do what it needs. And
Fascinating. I'm asking these things because I'm on a bit of a crusade at the moment. For the last 9 weeks, 9 weeks ago, I woke up one morning and said enough is enough, and I was terribly upset with my physical well-being in terms of I was clinically diagnosed as being obese.
Oh, really?
And for a guy who's been an athlete all his life to be categorically told that he's obese was the last straw. So I kind of had an awakening, and that awakening was around I'm 55 years old, and I thought, do I want to be the fat guy sitting on the couch watching television for the rest of my life, or do I want to be a guy like I've always been that wanted to change the world? And it didn't take me long to answer that question. So I thought, okay, I've obviously got to do things that I haven't been doing in the past, and to break the cycle. So I actually started off my new campaign, I call it my campaign, with doing my first ever multi-day fast. I'd never fasted over any extended period of time before.
Oh.
And I did a 48-hour fast. And it was life-changing because immediately after that, or during that and after it, I stopped eating processed sugar, and I haven't had anything processed sugar for the last 9 weeks in my new eating regime. I don't call it a diet, I call it an eating regime. And I started to immerse myself in a lot of online stuff with positive affirmation around body, but also around healthy living and all that sort of stuff. So I was really interested in what you said about sleep, because I've been doing a lot of research on sleep as well. And I'm starting to follow a lot of Indian guru stuff around sleep patterns and reasons for sleep, and they have a really interesting approach to it. And what I've been trying recently is that, and how they present it is, this one guy in particular that I'm watching and following is saying, well, the body doesn't actually need any sleep. What the body needs is rest. Mm-hmm. And if you use the analogy that when you go for a run and you get tired and you stop and you walk, that's actually resting the body, because you were running before, mm-hmm. and now you're walking, it's actually resting, right? And the other analogy he used was, when you're standing up and then you sit down, you're actually resting the body, because you are standing up, and that takes a different form of energy than it does when you're sitting down. And on this basis, that if you teach your body how to rest efficiently, then you don't actually need to sleep at all, because the body will get sufficient rest by just being. And this guy advocates, he actually gets 3 hours sleep a night, I think he said he gets, and he's been doing that for 25 years, and he looks like he's actually 70 something. He looks like he's 40.
Wow.
And he's been doing this and living and breathing this and saying, well, I've trained my body. You just don't do this overnight, right? So what I did was a multi-day fast. I went cold turkey. I stopped eating processed sugar, but I also implemented a brand new nutritional plan where I changed entirely everything that I was eating. And since that, I've lost 17 kilos, so that's 38 pounds.
Wow.
Of weight in the last 9 weeks. My sleep patterns have become tremendous. Like, I'm getting so much amazing quality sleep. My energy levels have gone through the roof that I just quoted to you today, I'm going to do 300 podcasts in the next 12 months, aren't I? So,
yeah, I've got it written down.
Yeah, so where's that energy coming from? So I'm really fascinated by what other people do and how they feel, and particularly around sleep, around eating, around meditation. And I started meditating 12 months ago, and it changed my life as well, like in terms of just the clarity of mind and a lot of other things that enabled me to let go of, and all those sorts of things. So fascinated how we can use this period of time around COVID-19 to make a better version of ourselves,
Yeah, well, for me, it's been that I started exercising.
Yeah,
because I chemotherapy left me, like it was hard, and it left me, your muscles waste away. So I wasn't exercising much before, like maybe once a week or something like that. I'd go for a walk, but that was it. And so and then after that, I didn't have energy, and I think a lot of the medication, and I still do take some medication that plays havoc with your sleep, and so all sorts of things. So whilst I'm sort of 3 years post treatments and things like that, I'm still feeling a little bit of aftermath from the treatments, but and unfortunately, as you said, sleep is everything. And so I have good days and I have bad days, and I'll have learned to go with it. But having good sleep, I mean, it makes so much difference, not only on your body, but on your mind. And so that's why I was really fascinated when you said, if you're standing, then you sit down, your body rests. But what about your mind? Like, don't you need the sleep for your mind to kind of switch off or go traveling on other planes? Like, how does it, like, if you're not actually sleeping, how does it impact your mind?
Yeah, well, that's the other side of the coin, which is the meditation side. So, what I've been doing in these last 9 weeks is I wanted to develop what I'm calling my healthy lifestyle program. I'm actually sharing some of this online. And what I decided to do was I didn't want to copy a diet or anything that's online that other people are doing, because I'm not those people. I've got my own characteristics of my body, and my biology is made up of certain components, right? And I know foods that I eat that are good for me, and I know that foods that give me energy, and I know foods that I struggle with and that are toxic for me. So it's been about experimenting with all of that to make sure that, no processed sugar and reducing natural sugars as well. So, people say eat as much fruit as you want. No, fruit's got a lot of sugar in it, a lot of natural sugar, and it gives you that spike during the day of sugar. So I've cut all that out, and I'm only eating fruits that have a low sugar or a low GCI content. And the meditation side, to get back to your point, it balances it up, because if you're able to quieten the mind, if you're also resting the body in state of, and he talks about in terms of this resting thing, is that obviously when we're lying down in the sleep position, that's when we're giving our bodies the ultimate rest. But it's scientifically proven that you can give your body just as much rest by sitting up and doing nothing, or actually just standing and doing nothing.
Okay.
But to quieten the mind, the meditation comes in, because it takes you to that place where the mind's not busy with all the other things that you've got going on in your life. So I've noticed when I started meditating 12 months ago, I wasn't able to put myself in a state of stillness for more than like 2 minutes. I was just hopeless, and my mind was thinking about all the things that I've got going on during the day and what I'm doing next week, and telling someone that I'm going to do 300 podcasts next year and all that sort of stuff. But now I can do 40 minutes of meditation and nothing comes into my mind. Nothing. My mind is completely still. I'm completely at peace. I feel my mind is at rest. Like I actually feel like my mind is sleeping and I'm not asleep, if that makes any sense at all.
It absolutely does. Yeah.
Yeah. So take that and combine it with all these other components, because I think it's all these things together. It's not one thing that's going to help you. I think it's a combination of, a good exercise. And I used to be a marathon. I've run 69 marathons in my life. And
Wow.
I used to be an extreme sports guy. I did triathlons. I did ultra distance races and all this sort of stuff all over the planet. And what I do now is I take the dog for a run in the morning, which lasts for about 30 minutes. Then I do a workout where I'm doing, crunches and core workout and all that sort of stuff for 12 minutes. That's all I do. So each day I'm doing 40 minutes of exercise, but it's high intensity. And I'm probably fitter now than I was when I was 30 years old. Like, seriously.
But the thing is, you listen to your body. You're listening to what
Yes.
your body needs now. And I think,
Yeah.
we all need to. I mean, pretty much my whole life I've been on a diet. And I recently, I was talking to somebody and she referred me, there's a book called If Not Diet, Then What? And I think so many of us get so caught up in listening to all the experts, and everybody's got like, eat carbs, don't eat carbs, eat sugar, don't eat sugar. Like after a while, it's like, okay, well, I can have lettuce and water. And you just you get so worked up, you forget what you're allowed to eat. And so I actually took that on a bit of a journey, and I've been working with an exercise physiologist and a dietitian, and I have to say it's just been such a breath of fresh air, because they look at me and they go, okay, tell me about your lifestyle, tell me how you live, and let's make small tweaks every day. So what you did was you went cold turkey and you did it, and you obviously, that's a good way for you to do it. For me, it's never been sustainable long term, but because they said, let's look at how you operate every day, and can we make tiny tweaks? And we've been doing that. And I'm feeling like over the past sort of 3 months that I've been seeing them, I've been feeling so much better than I had for such a long time.
Wow. That's great. That's fantastic. I love hearing people progressing in that area, because it's such an important, it is life, right? Life is life. And if we don't protect it, and that's been a lot of our conversation today, hasn't it? In terms of living to the maximum. And if you're not healthy, if you're not, focused on doing something that you're really enjoying doing, you're not getting the best out of life,
Health, both physical and mental. I mean, that can either mess up your life, or it can be so enjoyable. So you got to take care of you.
I heard a great one the other day, which I've been implementing, which is also a really good thing. It's called the NASA approach. NASA as in space agency, NASA, right? And the NASA approach is, whenever you're about to make a decision and you then go and make the decision, before you quickly counteract that with some excuses on why you can't do what you've just decided you're going to do, use the NASA approach, and the NASA approach is countdown from 5 to 0. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And apparently there's something in the brain that will stop you from making an excuse after you've made a decision if you do that countdown for 5 seconds.
Oh, fascinating.
Because what happens is when we see the thing is the body's designed in a way that it wants to always protect us, and it wants us to do things and the things that are not going to cause any fear or concern to us. So, and that's why we always come up with excuses not to do things, because the brain's actually trying to protect us from doing anything that might upset our rhythm or upset our current feeling of wellness, right? And what happens is we typically come up with an excuse, and the excuse comes from the very back part of the brain. And what happens is it's difficult for us to connect with that back part of the brain because everything's happening in the front part of the brain normally. And when we do this countdown process, it actually connects us straight into not going into that back part of the brain. And it only takes 5 seconds, and it stops us from coming up with an excuse, and then we can power on and go and do whatever decision it was that we made. So
I love that. I mean, I'm going to start using that. I can
try it
count
out.
from 5 to, because my monkey mind goes, I don't want to get out of bed. But when I do and I go for the walk, it makes all the difference. So I love.
And that's
5, 4,
exactly
3,
where
2,
it came from. That's amazing that you just said that, because that's exactly where it came from for NASA, because they found that a lot of people that had signed up for their programs actually use a snooze button on their alarm clock, right? And they wouldn't get out of bed because they'd talk themselves into an excuse to stay in bed for another 10 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
But if you actually go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I'm getting up now, I'm going, bang, away you go and do it. You don't lay in bed for another thing.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to try it tomorrow.
And for anybody that's listening who's saying, oh, why don't you count upwards? Well, no, if you count it upwards, you can keep counting and never have an end, right? So the reason you do
you can't 200. You can't cheat 200 to go to sleep. So really, you need the reverse.
I've got another one I'll share with you offline about how to go to sleep in 5 seconds, yeah? So it's a very... My dog's a genius at that. He can go to sleep in seconds, yeah. Ivana, look, we've had a fantastic. We could go on for another 3 hours.
We could. Sure. I know.
So much. So, on the basis of that, I'm going to actually get you back on the show in the future sometime, and we can carry on having a chat. But for everybody listening today, Ivana's going to be our new global business website guru series. We're going to start a series of podcast shows that Ivana's going to come on the show and share all her wonderful knowledge on building websites. So, if you're a entrepreneur, small business person, or just somebody that's genuinely interested in web development, then Ivana is going to gracefully be on our airways for the next months going forward, talking about web development and all the rest of it. So looking forward to that, Ivana. It's going to be great.
I am really excited about that too.
Yeah, tremendous. And she's going to build me a brand new website, so you're all going to be able to see the results.
Oh, the pressure's on.
I'm sure you can cope. So listen, thank you very much for being on the show today. It's been a joy, and can't wait for the next time for us to have a chat. We've got many, many stories to share, I'm sure.
I think so. I look forward to hearing more of those near-death experience stories.
Oh no, I don't want to tell you. I don't want to tell you too many of those. And I think, folks, next time we're actually going to do a video stream as well, because Ivana's going to get a little webcam for us, and we're going to go into the
does that mean hair and makeup?
Well, I'm not going to do that, but you can do whatever you want. I'm not going to.
Mark. It's been so much fun chatting with you about all things that come up for all of us in life. So I'll look forward to the next episode.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks everybody for listening, whoever's listening to the show today, and we'll be back soon again with another episode of the Humanity Inspires Show. There we are. That was Ivana Katz joining me today from Sydney in Australia on the Humanity Inspires Show. Hope you enjoyed our conversation. It went kind of everywhere, didn't it? But trying to focus on a lot of positive things in life right now. That's what it's all about. Now, if you're looking for more positive podcasts, then head on over to globaltravelchannel.com or theglobalbusinesspodcast.com. Those are 2 other shows that I do, and you can check out all the episodes that I've got there if you're into travel or business, or stay here if you want more inspiration with the Humanity Inspires series. Plenty more guests coming up soon for you on this show. Let us know how you find the podcast show. Give us your comments, your feedback, what you'd like to hear on the show. Happy to please anybody that we can out there in podcast land. And don't forget, by going to our websites, you can find where to download all these podcasts from. Places like Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, all the usual places where you get your good podcast. You'll find all of our shows. We do have a YouTube channel as well, so go over there and check it out, because you'll find all of our podcasts in one place. There we are. Well, that's it for this particular episode. I'll be back again really soon with another episode from the Humanity Inspire series. Until then, stay well, stay safe, and chase your dream, everyone. Bye for now.